Yeah, layoffs continue to batter tech companies, with fintech startup Bolt becoming the latest platform to announce cuts. They're citing structural changes, and that's a quote for the reason behind the decision. And Bolt joins companies like Lyft, Netflix, and Peloton, who also slashed their workforce. At least they announced their plans to. And Julie, this is an interesting story here. We live in New York, and I kind of can get my finger on the pulse of what's going on with a lot of these startups by the quality of their service. I don't use all of these, but for instance, I had this grocery delivery service, Avo, and their pitch was they would come to you and serve your entire building. So you could order one item, two items, it doesn't matter how few, and you just pay a flat fee. There's no delivery fee, there's no tipping It's really nice, but they just pivoted. They're not doing any kind of service what they did before. Something to do with businesses. My point is, a lot of these companies the rubber's hitting the road. They're facing higher borrowing costs and the prospect of those borrowing costs going much higher. And we're starting to see these layoffs. Important to note, too, that this doesn't necessarily translate into layoffs for the rest of the economy, but this is a potential canary. And I'm glad we're talking about this because I'm just seeing more of this. And I think we're going to see, I think the ball has just kind of started rolling. There was an interesting graphic we were talking about a company called Klarna the other day. And I was able to find, thanks to Ines Ferre, a chart of all the startups and the layoffs. And so you look at it, here's a pandemic. I'm sorry, I don't have it here. That's natural gas. I was going to use my fingers. So here's a pandemic, and it makes kind of a U. So we are at the other end of that U. It's not there yet.
I like
but
this
there's a U.
technical charting
with
your hands.
Yes, time out.
What's also interesting to me regarding these startups is I've been seeing some chatter over the past couple of days that the venture capital funding has finally started to tighten.
Yes.
And this was something we were hearing was not happening. Even as the equity markets, the public equity markets were tumbling, we were talking to folks in the VC world initially a month, 2 months ago who were saying, no, everything's still wine and roses over here. Funding is still not a problem. But now it seems to be that we are seeing a little bit of tightening. So you're getting the privately held startups in particular, and Bolt is on that list in addition to Klarna, which is still private. Bolt reportedly is laying off employees as well. So that perhaps a reflection of that their funders are also not being as patient with them in this particular environment. So that's part of it. It's also interesting when you say, well, it's not necessarily a proxy for the broader environment and what we're going to see.
Yet, right.
I mean, I was just mentioning what's happening with Apple, where they're actually raising wages. So those with the resources to still continue to do so are still going to focus on employee retention for now in this environment, perhaps. But it's definitely really interesting story to continue to watch.
Yes, it is.